questions throughout the session. So this kind of third red circle, there's like a speech bubble. If you move your mouse, there's a speech bubble there. If you click that, on the right-hand side, it will bring up the chat. Please use that to ask questions. There'll be a time at the end dedicated to answering questions. Please use that throughout. And Adam is going to be helping me kind of co-facilitate, and he's like the king of summarizing webinar chat discussions. So I'm heavily reliant on that. What we're going to be doing is, like I say, this is quite a kind of personal thing. I'm going to be giving a personal perspective on approaches to work that aim to be sustainable, restful, fun, and productive. This is largely for work that involves creativity and for projects that take more than one day. I think if it's less than one day, you've just got one project that takes less than one day, I think you could cram. So yes, you could do that for that. I think more than that, or multiple one-day projects, I've found that the way that I'm going to be describing was massively helpful. So I'm going to start off giving a little bit of my personal experience, and I'm going to move to principles and practices so that I think might be helpful. But I guess I just really encourage you to just forgive me for if like I'm promoting practices that won't work for you. You know, so I guess I wouldn't spend the time thinking, well, that wouldn't work where I work. That wouldn't work for me personally, because you'll feel really annoyed by the end of this. And so will the person sitting next to you. But don't reject a good principle because I've promoted an unhelpful practice. So I just encourage you to be thinking, how could this be relevant to where I work, to the way that I do things throughout what we're doing? Like, don't take what I've said as read. But and I guess this is all in the vein of, really, for me, this is like a test and a conversation starter. This isn't, hey guys, here's how to work productively and funly. This is more like, I've had this experience, how interesting. I wonder if this is relevant to other people. And so I'd be so interested, like, in your feedback, like today and forever afterwards. Please get in touch if there's stuff about the things that we talk about today that you find helpful, or you find a tweak on it that you really think is useful. I would want to know, because this is really like an initiator. Everything I've seen in terms of research has largely been like observational. So you say, oh, look, if we look at these people who do this, they do better than people who do this. There's been less intervention research, as in, you do this, you do that, and let's see who's better. So I'm intrigued. And it's also just to see, is this relevant or is this just me? So yes, that's really the framing of where I'm coming from. And in that vein, if you have to slope off early, please complete the evaluation form. Adam's going to put it in the chat as well. That would be really helpful. A colleague of mine flagged up that actually there's stuff missing. What I'm going to be talking about is like a structure to work, but I'm not going to be talking about ways of writing, the nuts and bolts of that, which is really helpful as well. That isn't covered, but it is important and helpful. And in terms of the setup for this, I guess I'd really encourage you to think like you were in like a woodwork shop, as in you would expect to go in, work on something and leave with something that's usable. And so like right from now, I just encourage you to be thinking about what you're going to take away from this. It might even be like, oh, this is a nice way to set up a webinar. I don't know, but whatever it is, don't, you know, forgive me for the stuff that isn't totally relevant to you, and please do take the things that are, and don't throw the baby out with the bathwater if there's stuff that's not relevant, but that, you know, don't let that ruin it for you. And I guess as well, I would have a pen and paper, or like a document open, or you know, like, I don't know, a message thing on your phone to write down stuff that you find useful, like from now. And I guess I've been to a lot of webinars over these last few weeks. I know the temptation will be to like be checking your emails a little bit on the side. I'm not going to be asking you to concentrate for very long. So I just really encourage you to like let this thing be the thing that you're doing for now, and really give it your best thought. And even if there's things that come up that aren't even related to what I'm saying, I just really encourage you to take something useful from this by giving it your kind of best energy, rather than it being like the side project for this next kind of 25 minutes, or well, in the full length of time, hour and a half. And most importantly, don't take my word for it on anything that I'm saying. I'm encouraging you to go and test this out, find out for yourself how this fits for you. So I'm going to start by just describing what happened, and then we'll talk about like kind of like the assumptions that kind of came out of that. So January 2018, I stopped working on a research project. So I had 2 days kind of clinical work, and then 3 days I didn't know what to do with. And so I decided to go full-time PhD. So you're allowed to work 15 hours if you're full-time PhD. So I was doing 3 days a week PhD. And I thought, this is so much more than I've been doing before. I'll easily be able to finish this in like a year and a bit. So April 2019. And what that would also let me do would be apply for this kind of postdoctoral role and stay in research, which I'd kind of stumbled into, but I'd kind of come to really enjoy. So by the September, I was kind of realizing that I'd been over optimistic, as in people who are way ahead of me were like, "Oh, you're going to finish in April. I'm not going to finish till the October, and I've already done that bit that you haven't done." And the dream was kind of slowly unraveling. And also around this time, so October 2018, it had been 10 years since my wife had been like a stay-at-home mum. And this is like a real like achieving kind of career woman with lots of kind of like career aspirations. I really was super aware that this attention on my development had like outgrown had like spent more time than it needed to. And I just started to realize that I probably could just about finish by April 2019, but not very well. And in that time, I would make everyone's life hell, especially anyone who lived with me, including my own. And this would just make for like the worst possible next 8 months of my life if I did this. And it would be like, you know, this was a point where Lucy was kind of looking for like a job after a long period of time. I really wanted that to be the main event in our family, not stuff to do with me, because it'd been ages about me. And so then I went to a meeting with my supervisors, and I remember it really well because they'd kind of all along this time, January to September, been saying, you know, that's really challenging. I've never seen anyone do it like that, but okay. And I said, look, I realized what you said. And actually, yeah, you're right. I'm gonna not finish in April 2019. I'm gonna leave it till May 2020, which was when I could finish. And there was like this kind of palpable relief in the room as my two supervisors were like, there's almost like kind of like relaxed laughter, like, oh, great, I'm glad you've come to that finally came to that conclusion. And I was like, oh man, they've really not wanted me to, they've just been letting me run this because they wanted to let me be independent. So I was kind of grateful for that, but then I was like, oh, they really didn't think I could do this, and now they don't. And it was kind of like, then it all kind of came out, yeah, because that would just make it so much easier. You'll be able to plan it, time it, all this kind of thing. So I'm not going to finish in the April 2019. I'm going to finish in May 2020, in September 2018. Then November 2018, there was a massive change for me. So in my family, so my dad had like a working age dementia, and there's a chance that me and my siblings could have the same thing. And I think that there was like positives to that throughout my life always, as in it kind of makes you like think, I'm going to live each day as it comes. I'm going, you know, that kind of thing. And this, I'm going to live this life, this bit of life now. I'm not going to like store it up for somewhere later down the line. And anyway, my brother persuaded me to take part in this research. And then in November, we went for our second visit for this research. And over the years, there's been various false dawns of there being a treatment for this dementia and all this. And then it really, really did look like it was highly likely there would be like a good treatment for this kind of dementia that's in my family. And it was just a total game changer. Me and my brother went and did our test, and then in the evening we went out for dinner, and we were like, oh my gosh, I could live like a really long life. I could see your kids grow up. You could see my kids grow up. And it was just, I can't tell you how that changed. I hadn't realized how much I had limited myself from thinking about living long, and I guess ultimately working a long period of time. And that was a real big change for me. So I guess the next day I'm kind of on the train, I'm doing some work, and what slammed me in the face was the thing that had been like screaming silently in the back of my mind the whole time I had been in research, which was that I'm not cut out for this. This is what my head had been saying the whole time. This isn't, you're not that guy who does research, as in, I think now people think, like written my backstory who don't know me in a way that is not true. So if you did A levels, you probably did better than me. I got 2 C's and a D. I got my place at my undergraduate course through clearing. I kind of just got enough to be able to apply for the clinical psychology doctorate. And then on the doctorate, I failed everything that I could have failed but pass. And so this is the story that's going on in my head, is you haven't seen anyone who's like you, who's like really distractible, kind of a procrastinator, who is able to have a long, productive career as a kind of clinical academic. And this is what kind of comes home. I'm like, oh yeah, I could live for ages now, maybe. But actually, I'm not cut out for the career path that I'm actually on. And this was like a real wake-up call. Alongside that, what I decided to do by like finishing like later, May 2020, was just take any old clinical job. And I just really didn't want any of the jobs that came up. I just really wanted to stay in research. So I'm kind of feeling like, what, am I even meant to be on this career? I've just stumbled into this, and now I might be doing it for like a normal length of life. I couldn't like duck out early and say, oh gosh, I had so much promise, but I didn't get to finish it. I can't do that now, maybe. And I guess the only reason where I went then happened was because I can't explain it without explaining my faith, in that I am a Christian, and not like kind of lip service things, kind of like the key part of all the important decisions in my life. And so as part of that, I assume that God is kind, that God likes to be generous to his children like you and me, and that he really likes to use areas of like weakness to like show really great things. And so I was thinking like, well, maybe if this is what's going to happen, you know, I'm heading down this career path, maybe this way of working that I'd started to kind of stop like toy with, which was basically really working when you're working, really resting when you're not. That's probably the only way that this could actually fit for me as a person, my lifestyle, in a way that's sustainable, that could make sense. So maybe this isn't an accident. Maybe this is like a proof of principle opportunity where I can just try it out. I can see if it works. And if it doesn't, it doesn't, and I'm on the wrong career path and I just go somewhere else. If it does, then it's a great affirmation that maybe this could work, but it's just not going to look like the way that I've kind of imagined people have been working. So then January 2019, and you can picture the scene. It's like a sitcom. So January after this, the big clincher was in this was, what does Lucy think? If I don't finish like a year from now, I finish in like 6 months from now. And I was like, well, that's the deciding factor. Like, you know, if she says no, then we're not doing it. And I was like, look, I'm just thinking maybe I would actually try and finish my PhD in April 2019, and rather than May 2020. I know that's, you know, maybe that'll take more time. You know, it's going to make life hard between February and April, but, you know. And she was like, what, this PhD could have gone on for longer than April? No way, you're just finishing it. You just finish it then, just get it done. Like, we're all bored of the PhD now, just get it over and done with. And so that was like the clincher. And then January, I go back to those same supervisors and I'm like, oh yeah, I remember when I said that we're going to finish in 2020. No, I would really like to actually do it by the end, in 3 months from now. Give you a chapter a week and you give me feedback. And they were so patient and gracious to me that they agreed. And this, I think, was a big part of why. Because over that previous year, what I'd worked out was that it takes me about 10 lots of 25 minutes to write about between 1,500 and 2,000 words. that's pretty slow, but I knew that that's what I could do. And so then what I was able to do was be able to show them this in that meeting and say, well, look, roughly speaking, I think this is how it could look in terms of what each week could look like, because this is how much how much time I've got, and this is how quickly I write, because I know how fast I write now. And that kind of made them agree. So I end up in this kind of place where what I'm doing is I'm working for 25-minute blocks, having breaks, and then I'm working like another 25 minutes, 5-minute block, 25 minutes, 5-minute block, and then do that 4 times, and then a big longer break. So this is called like the Pomodoro technique, but I kind of extended it to my whole lifestyle. And for that time from end of January to April of writing up, these were the assumptions about work that I was taking. Firstly, that many traditional work habits actually undermine creativity and productivity. Secondly, that peak concentration is shorter than we usually assume, and we wouldn't notice when we aren't at our best, concentrating at our best. Then I was assuming that actually you could get back to really good concentration from pretty short breaks much quicker than we generally assume. You'd assume you need a big long break to get back to working at your best. I didn't think that was true from my experience that year. I then assumed that multitasking was generally less productive than doing one thing at a time. So I tried to do that as little as possible. I was kind of going on the call that if I'm really working when I'm working, I'm really not working when I'm not. I don't need to work as many hours. I can just make sure that the working bit is really good. So more hours of work does not necessarily lead to greater productivity. And I think this was a real clincher for me, that we generally aren't working on intended tasks at our best as much time as we actually think we are, that we're on them less time than we realize. So that was my assumptions about work. These were my assumptions about rest and play. That actually we are spending more time on unintended or unplanned breaks than, well, for me, more than I dared to allow myself to recognize, but definitely more than we would think. I was assuming that not all breaks are equal. So I guess some of the traditional ways of taking breaks that I had been doing, I didn't think would actually restore my concentration, my attention in the way that I would like. So as in more active breaks were probably going to be more restorative. Things that were very different from the things that I was doing when I was working were probably going to be more restorative than doing something similar. So if I'm sitting looking at a screen, moving to sitting and looking at a different screen probably isn't going to be that restorative for me. Next, that rest is not the opposite of good work. And I think this is so deep in the water that it took quite some undoing to get my head around, that this is an integral part, that whilst I am actually not doing focused work, as in writing in this example, I might still be working on that problem in a different way while I'm shooting basketball, for example. That good quality breaks and rest actually prompt creativity. And I think this just makes sense both logically and neurobiologically, in that I'm focused work, I'm using some very specific parts of my mind to address the problems that I'm trying to solve. Now I step away from this focused work and I do something different. I don't know, I walk around the garden or shoot basketball or play the guitar. That problem isn't going to have gone away. It's probably going to be being chunked away in my mind in the background, but now it can draw from many, many more resources, different resources, so it's more likely to come up with a creative solution to the problem. And this was again a real key for me, that being more intentional about the breaks that I have was I mean, it was partly to kind of make life easier, but it was also for the benefit of the work, that it wasn't that I was just taking a break because I wanted to take life easy. It was that if this doesn't make my work better, more productive, more efficient, better quality, this probably isn't worth doing. So as in, I'm assessing how good the breaks are based on their impact on my actual work, not just how nice it feels when I'm on my break. It's a really pleasant byproduct that is what happened, but the work was the focus. And this is what I mean, that rest and work aren't the opposite. If you really love your work, rest is an essential part of doing that job really well. I hadn't realized this, that actually, you know, doing 25, so I'd do 25 minutes, check if I wanted to have a break, and then do another 25 if I felt like I could do 2, then I would definitely take a 10-minute break there. But actually doing that kind of work definitely required more discipline than the way that I had been doing it before, which was probably working less, but certainly not taking any intentional breaks, but certainly lots of unintentional breaks. So as in, this wasn't the easy route, this was definitely harder initially. And lastly, I think I assumed that finding great value in work was always going to be of central importance, no matter what technique I used to set up my work or how I was going to do it. So where this led was this is kind of what a typical working day looked like for me. So the first task I would do, well, I would start around about 7 o'clock in the morning. First task I would do is decide what I was going to do for my breaks. So every short break was about 10 minutes. Every long break was, I say about, it was exactly 10 minutes. Every long break was 20 minutes. And so I'm deciding what I'm going to do that is fun in my working day as the first thing that I do. And each week I tried to add a new type of break to the list. And I also tried to have some chores in there too. So like whilst I was making the breakfast, I might try and put the breakfast things away. I'd try and make the dinner in the evening, something like that. And I'm assessing how much is this helping me like restore my concentration. When I go back to work, how helpful are these things for me? Then the second job of the day is what are the actual intended tasks that I'm going to try and complete in this day, and I'll rank them. So this was actually what I did for this session. It took me 22 lots of 25 minutes. I haven't included the last 3, but it was probably about, that's probably about right. And how long did it actually take compared to what I estimated, and what was the difference? So the big learning thing for me is setting up breakout groups in teams took a freaking long time. Everything else was kind of on track apart from that. That was a lot harder than I had expected. So I'm super grateful for Alice's help with that too. So I'm learning here all the time how well I'm able to estimate specific types of task, and then what I can do with that. So I just wanted to show you this before we move to the next thing. Between that, so writing up my PhD, February to April 2019, these are some of the things that happened in that time. And I just want to say, this isn't like a typical 3 months for me. This was like about as rich and vivid a life as I'd ever lived up to that point. I didn't think you could do this. Like, you know, climb trees whilst you're writing up your PhD, take a holiday, like 6 days off, and leave, and just feel confident that that was actually helping my work. And so this was the biggest surprise, and this was kind of probably the key of why I wanted to share this, was it was like better than normal life. I got on better with Lucy and my kids than normal life, and I was more productive. I felt like, it just felt like life felt spacious. And I really took in this time, so one of the things I did was go to an awards evening, and I went with my boss, who has since died. At that time she had metastatic bowel cancer, and I took her home after the awards evening. I was so amazingly pleased that she was able to go. And we were talking about stuff, and it really fits with this, in that she was like, I was saying like some of the stuff that she was doing was amazing. And she was like, well, you know, some of it is even more amazing because I've got cancer. It's like, I'm going to play football with my boys and I've got cancer. It's like makes the little thing even sweeter. And on a tiny, tiny by comparison level, that was what was going on for me. Was I'm writing up my PhD, and I'm doing I'm doing the soup run. I'm writing up my PhD and I'm climbing a tree. It just made all the little things like 10 times sweeter, because it was in the midst of like quite intense, hard work. So yeah, you know this bit. The Orcs Conversations, I start writing in February 2019, finish April, start the postdoc in May. Hooray, it was great. So overall, really work when you're working, really rest when you're not. And I'm imagining that this will improve productivity. Last bit that I wanted to share about why I wanted to share this was the urge to look busy. So after that, April, right at the PhD, May, go back to work. And so in this time, I've been like, you know, at 11 o'clock in the day, running around the park near my house, or, you know, just doing all sorts of things on these breaks. And then when I got back to the office, and I work in a place which is nice to work in, like very open, very friendly, I had not realized how strong the urge was to look busy all of the time, even on my breaks. There was the thing that I got a sense of was there's like a few things you can do on your break. There's a lot of things you would just be weird, and you can't really socially acceptably do that on your break. And overall, I just got the sense that there was an unspoken message. I think my workplace is really great, but the sense was good workers look busy to other workers. And this had never been a problem to me before, because I always looked busy before. Whereas now I felt like there's some ways that was actually undermining my work. And so I really wanted to flag this up, because I can imagine if you are going back to a workplace anytime soon, you're probably going to experience this. Or if you've been working differently whilst working at home, you're probably going to experience this. And this was really central for me to embedding this, not just in that little project time, but into just the way that I did work overall. So lastly, I guess I just wanted to frame the way that I've been thinking about this. Imagine that this was kind of my experience. Imagine that you had a classic car, but you're looking around and you're seeing like people have got VW Golfs and like Honda Civics, and you think, oh, that's how you got to drive it, like those cars. You know, you don't know how they're maintaining. I don't know how they're maintaining those cars. I don't even know where they're going, but I'm going to drive it like that. So I'm kind of driving this classic car like it's a runaround. And then I want to go on a really long journey, and I watch how other people are driving their cars. Again, don't know where they're going, don't know where they've come from, but I'm going to drive this classic car, you know, at a similar way that I see them driving it. And it doesn't want to do that, and it will go slower, and I'll be really frustrated with the car. And maybe I've got to take some people with me on this journey, you know, like my family are all in this car, and I'm annoyed. Maybe if they weren't here, this would be lighter and I could go as fast as those people. And I think the realization for me was, maybe if I just like listen to this car, and okay, I'm going to need to stop more regularly to put oil in. And I'm going to, this tire goes down, actually. Let's just make sure we stop regularly to pump that up. Or, you know what I mean? Just take the time to actually treat the car as the car is. And I would get to where I'm going quicker for me. And it's kind of irrelevant because I'm just staying in my lane. It's kind of, I don't even know where those guys are going. And I was making completely unnecessary and irrelevant comparisons by doing that. And I guess I'm just kind of wondering, maybe there's some other classic cars out there that are operating in a similar way. So what we're going to do now is take a break, a 5-minute break, up to 5 minutes, as in it would be great if you could come back by 10:36. What I'm going to ask you to do is to do something different to what we're doing now, as in something different to sitting, looking at a screen and listening to a person. Something that you could imagine would like help you really concentrate for the next bit, and maybe would help you just think freely for this next 5 minutes. If you don't need to think about anything in particular, and you don't need to not think about this session or your work, that's fine. Think about whatever you want to think about. Something that's doable in 5 minutes, but you don't have to finish it. And I just encourage you to treat this as an experiment. Go beyond what you'd usually do in a break. As in, if you'd usually just sit, try moving. If you'd usually be inside, try going outside. If your eyes would usually be open, try them with your eyes closed. If you'd usually be talking, try listening. If you'd use, do something different to normal. And don't go and like check your emails now or go and try and do some work. Because if I'd have kept talking, you probably would have stayed and listened to me talk. But I'm saying this is part of the session. Please do this. So let's make it 10:37 back in the meeting, if that's okay. And now just take a 5-minute break, come back 10:37, and I'll see you then. You can leave and come back, or you can just kind of stay muted and cameras off. Nothing much is going to happen, and I'll see you at 10:37. Okay, bye. Hi everyone, welcome back. If you've been away, hope you have. I am just going to ask you, if you're happy to reflect on what you noticed during your break. So, as in thoughts, comments, ideas, observations that came to you. That'd be really great, and just put them in the chat. And we're going to spend a few minutes just talking about that now, and that'd be great. And I'm gonna, so yeah, thoughts, comments, ideas, observations, stuff that came to you during the break, or just what it was like to just take a break at that point, or the kind of break that you took. Please just let us know in the chat now, and we'll kind of talk about that. I'd like to invite Adam up, if you're here, if you wouldn't mind joining me.
Yes, I'm here. Can you see me?
Yeah, hiya, Adam.
Hi.
So, could you, tell me a little bit about what's been going on in the chat?
Yes, we've had a couple of questions. Camilla firstly asked, how did you work out how fast you write? Because she made the point that actually it can be hard to predict that realistically, because it can vary sort of week to week. So I guess she wondered how you worked your writing speed out. And then another question from Annabelle was, well, I guess more of a reflection rather than a question, but I think in terms of the urge to look busy at work, she was just reflecting, I'm not sure if she's working from home at the moment, but she was saying that at the minute she goes out at sort of 10:30 every morning with her son, but she can't imagine doing that when she's back at work, even though it's actually really helpful for her.
Yes. So so the writing speed thing we're going to address in this next section, so I'll kind of park that for now. But just to talk a little bit about that looking busy at work thing, I guess I've spoken to this now with a few friends who work in different areas. This is in general my estimation of how you do this, if you're like in charge, I've noticed there's kind of gradually been like a move to more focus on the outcome of your work than how you do the work, in lots of workplaces. But I think to be able to really free up that kind of break, going out for a walk with your son, you need to actually purposefully lower the focus on stuff that makes you want to look busy, as in like presenteeism. You need to actually purposefully model and do things that say, you don't need this, you just need the outcome. But you're probably going to need quite a firm focus on outcome to be able to make this work. And so I think if you're in charge, that's what I would do. Is what I see happening is there was a kind of focus on looking like you're working, and then now they've added to that a focus on outcomes. I think you need to lower the focus on the looking like you're working stuff. Personally, this is my approach to how you kind of do breaks in the work setting, is get it signed off by the person who actually knows what you do with your job and knows how well you're doing. So this was the weird thing. Like I would, like I say, like I don't know, not lunchtime, like a random time, be out walking around my park, and I know that the people who are actually in charge of my work are happy with what I'm doing. But for some reason, I mean, I'm aware this could just be me as like a bit of a people pleaser, but I'm like looking at people who don't even know me, have no idea what job I do, and I'm feeling like they think you should be at work. They think you should be, this is like a working day and you should, that's the thing. And so I guess where I've gone about it is get it straight with the people that you need to get it straight with, and then just be like a vigorous, go right up in the grill of that voice. As in, over this last summer, I was like, I'm going to flip and just lie on the park at 11:30 on that break, because I know that is good for me. I'm just going to go right in the face of that voice that is telling me they're looking at you and they're thinking that they're thinking that you should be at work. I'm just going to go right up in its face. And so I'd really encourage you to do that. Yeah. Hey, it's great to see some of. We good. What are you? I mean, whilst I've been talking, I've seen there's quite a few things coming in the chat. What can you use your summarizing skills, Adam? Your super summarizing skills. Help us out.
I'll try. There's a lot going on. I think the perception that I'm getting is sort of that it's actually nice to just do something different compared to what you would normally do. And actually, I think there's a sense that actually giving yourself permission to do that rather than doing what you would normally do seems to be helpful for a lot of people. I can see a lot of people sort of have took the opportunity to go outside, which I think is quite unusual for a lot of people in a break, particularly such a short break. But then I guess there was some reflections as well, that actually it can feel like that if you're not working in the break, then you might be wasting time. So it's almost like that pressure to, I should be doing something. And I think that's probably because we all feel like that a lot of the time, and there's a lot of pressure. And just, a lot of stuff about slowing down and just taking some time for yourself is helpful, and perhaps something that we don't often do. Then just having a look at the most latest ones.
Can I just speak to that? Because I think this tees up where we're going now perfectly, actually, in that, if the stuff that I'm suggesting, you try it out in your own work and it doesn't make work better, do not use it, with my wholehearted blessing. My guess is it will make you more productive. And that is why I feel confident to go and lie on the park in, at 10:30, because I know this is actually helping me be more productive. That voice I don't think is right, and it's kind of quietened down now, but it was at times screaming at me, and especially in when I'm around other people who are working. But I think it tees up where we're going now, because I think this will help. Thanks very much, Adam.
No worries,
no worries. In a little bit.
Yeah.
Okay. So yes, so I'm going to talk a little bit about, can everyone's, I don't know if you can see that. Oh, you can see it, okay. Right. So I'm going to turn those assumptions into some principles and then some practices. And again, probably not going to be needing to listen for more than 20 minutes. So just if you can focus, think how this fits for you, that'd be really helpful. Pop it in the chat. Getting someone else involved often helps kind of generate some kind of motivation, some energy to it. This would be like the first principle. Working longer does not equal greater productivity. I'm going to put a tiny bit of research on this. So this is hours worked along the bottom and additional productivity along the side. What this is saying is that if you work, basically between 40 and 50 hours is about the peak productivity. Over 50 hours, the amount of additional productivity you get massively nosedives, completely nosedives. And in fact, what might not be obvious is that, let's say if you're working 65 hours a week or 70 hours a week, you would have been better off, you would have been more productive if you were working 45 hours. So this is the classic study is in munitions work, but it's been replicated in a number of areas, including healthcare and software engineers. This is an interesting thing. This is hours since starting work. So your best productivity is 2 or 3 hours after you started work. But again, after about 6 hours, things massively nosedive. And this is part of the reason why people who take lunch breaks are more productive, both inside the day and across time. There's a lot of other benefits actually as well. That they prefer their organization, they feel better about their work, that kind of thing too. But it's because those last few hours are adding so little to your productivity, they are not worth it, even in that day, but definitely not over time. Here's another little interesting fact. The interesting thing about this research, again, replicated amongst software engineers in particular. This thick line is, one of them is the night shift, one of them is the day shift. Everything we would think about how humans work would say that the less productive line across the day would be the night shift. Everything is working against you there, but it's actually the other way around. The more productive time is the night shift, the less productive time is the day shift. And if you're like me, this might well have, this might well have actually made you think that working at night is better than working at day. But that isn't what this is showing. What this is showing is that there are fewer distractions during night shift. Even though everything in your body is working against that, it makes you more productive than the day when there's many, many more things that would distract you from work. So what are the reasons why this is like it is? And I've experienced all of these, so I'm just going to share them with you. Firstly, the more hours you work, the more detrimental the effects of overwork. So if you are working, say, 65, 70 hours, you're probably going to have experienced, well, sleep loss would be a very common experience with that, but many other things. You're likely to be more stressed, more agitated, more easily annoyed. Your body's probably going to be more tense, that kind of thing. And therefore, all of your work becomes less productive because you're just not in a frame to work well. Secondly, and I've definitely experienced this, that you actually become less productive at all hours. So I don't know if you've ever had this where it's like, right, I'm going to be here till God knows when. I'm going to be working to like all hours. And so I've just got to put a shift in. And actually, I might just subconsciously lower the amount of effort I put in at all points. And I might think, oh, I'm going to be here till whenever. So it doesn't matter if I just stop and just play on my phone or, you know, just like Google this or do that. I'm going to be here till whenever. So I become less productive overall because I've kind of assumed that I'm going to be there at all times. And this is also why the more hours that you're working, the self-reporting of it becomes poorer because life and work have just got mashed together. So it's much harder to, there are other reasons why you might report working more hours than you actually do. But part of it is that it's just a big mashup now. You can't tell when you're working and when you're not working. So it's just like, yeah, probably 70 hours because like I was kind of in the mix of, I was in a workplace. So maybe that's what it was. This, again, this totally fits with the day, hours worked in a day thing, that the later hours worked are actually detrimental to productivity. So maybe you were just as productive up to like 40 to 50 hours, but over that, maybe some of the things that you were doing were causing mistakes that actually undid some of the productivity earlier in the week, or it took more time to undo the stuff that you've done in that period than it would if you'd have done nothing. And yeah, these two I just want to put in there because I've experienced all of these. I'm sure some people watching will have experienced this. That actually, it doesn't matter how many hours you work, there are some things that just need to happen just to keep life going. So you've got to pay bills, you've got to eat, you might need to pick up kids, that kind of thing. There are tasks that just have to be done. And so especially if you're in that vein of I've got to be here to whenever, you just mix them in as if they're part of work. And so then you aren't actually working, you're just doing necessary tasks in the midst of work and making the work that you do less good quality. Lastly, this kind of idea of necessary recreation, again, this particularly came from like software engineers, that actually, even if you don't make any room for play, there's a kind of like an internal urge to do something playful in there. And so you'll do that anyway, whether you've made time for it or not. You'll get into some kind of lengthy email banter, or you'll, I don't know, start Googling stuff that is kind of comedy. You'll do things for a break, whether you take that break or not. And so your hours extend. But I think probably the most, I think this is quite persuasive, but this is all based on self-reports or bulk hours actually in there. This kind of thing is kind of like quite a big picture kind of idea. Whereas what they've started to do, I think it's called Rescue Time, and another place called, I can't remember what that one's called, where they actually, they've got like 225 million hours of work. And what you do is you sign up and you decide what is a work application on whatever device you're working on, and you decide what is not a work application. And they tell you how much of your time is working, which is much more accurate than this kind of thing. And the top 10% of those, hundreds of thousands of people and millions of hours of work 50, was so close to what I've been doing that I was like, oh, that was so affirming. For every 52 minutes of work, they take 17 minutes of rest. They might not actually be resting, but they aren't on any application that they've decided is work. I would still say it's probably an overestimation, because just being on a work application doesn't mean that you are working. But overall, I guess what I'm saying is, you're probably not going to be able to concentrate that well for really long periods anyway. Like, it's kind of like just being honest with ourselves about what's real and what's not. So yes, this working longer does not necessarily equal productivity. And the key part of that is unplanned or unintentional breaks. And I guess this bit, I just want to yeah, I mean, I'm saying everything's really important, but this is really important as well. Most of that is outside of our awareness. And I love the research around mobile phones in this vein. So University of Texas did a series of experiments which are just so beautiful, where even they give someone like a mentally taxing task, as in you're going to need to work at your best to be able to do this task. Yeah. No phone around, and then they gradually introduce it in various ways. So just have the phone on the desk, and their cognitive capacity is reduced if the phone is on the desk, even if it's off. So the phone's in reach, but it's not even on. And then gradually they showed that the reduction in cognitive capacity increased the more intrusive they made the phone. So off to on, more reduction. On to put alerts on, more reduction. Alert to you, they send a text during the task, massive reduction in cognitive capacity. And this isn't because the person's not even looking at the phone. They're not looking at the phone. This is the important thing. It's that part of your mind, probably that you don't even realize, is making a mental effort not to pick up the phone. Even if it's off, part of your concentration is saying, don't pick up the phone, don't pick up the phone, don't pick up the phone, which could have been spent on something else. Now that's mobile phones, and I know that that's probably quite a big one, but like, think of where that transfers to. Having your emails open, email notifications, having food on the desk, people around you, basically anything where you could have the urge to go and do something different other than the work that you have that is kind of like there to do. So I guess what I'm saying is, it's not necessarily that you're always on, I don't know, social media. So that recovery, time recovery thing was basically saying it's about 7% of the time is on social media. That's not massive. It's not that. It's that you've got maybe multiple distractions, or you've got loads of applications open when you're trying to do one job. And actually that's taking up some of your ability to concentrate. Yeah. And I know we're touching on this already, but this is just like such a key principle for me. Looking and feeling busy is not the same as productivity. So like I said, I often have looked busy, and it's really gratifying when you breeze through an office fast and like people say, oh gosh, you look busy. That's quite gratifying. It's like, oh yeah, it's because I got a lot on and I'm doing a lot of stuff, by the way, and I'm kind of a big deal. Which is not the same feeling you would get when people say, oh gosh, when you're sat with your eyes closed on your lunch break, which is kind of like one of those unacceptable tasks I've noticed, but it's really restorative for me if I spent the whole morning talking, doing therapy sessions. And so I guess the one bit I want to flag up is the multitasking illusion, in that how busy and productive does multitasking feel? And I guess in terms of the research around that, the thing that got the headlines was women are better than men at multitasking. And that is true. Women are better than men at multitasking, but that wasn't the headline of the research. The headline of the research was multitasking is not as good as doing one thing at a time, full stop. Doesn't matter whether you're a man or a woman. And there's a couple of exceptions to that. If you are exceptionally skilled and rehearsed at a multitask, then you're okay. Like driving, that you get lots of practice with that. You maybe start off, really focused on it, and over time you're singing and having a conversation and watching a bird while you're driving. You can do it if you're really practiced and you're really skilled in that. Other than that, one thing at a time. And you'd probably be better just doing the steering if someone else can do the pedals for you. It doesn't rule that out, but you can do it there. And email, I think, is the classic illustration of this. And I've realized how productive I feel, like bashing through email. Oh gosh, loads of emails, bash, 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 bash. yeah, now I'm really getting somewhere here because I've got less emails. And I found it really interesting that this guy, Merlin Mann, who developed this thing called inbox zero, as in you try and keep your inbox empty. And recently, I think it was last year, he basically rejected it because it became an end to itself. The point of managing your inbox was this was kind of his point, was to loosen up time for other things. It wasn't so that you could feel really great because you cleared your inbox out. It was because the inbox clearing task became something that it wasn't meant to be. And actually, if you were going to just fill that extra time with something else, which was just going to be like junk, then what was the point of it? You could have gone home earlier. And I just thought that was a really interesting comment on this idea of feeling looking busy does not necessarily equal productivity. And lastly, I think a principle is that thinking about natural limits as well as potential is quite important. It has become important for me, and I guess I would share it for you as a principle that I've been kind of operating under. As in, we talk so much, I mean, almost exclusively about potential. If you just did this, you could reach the stars, you could reach the moon, you know, you can go further than you ever thought possible. And that makes a nice like slogan and thing to go on your wall. But I mean, a less attractive bumper sticker would be, you're probably not as productive as you imagine. Your mental capacity is a bit smaller than you might think it is. But that's not bad. It just means you don't need to run the world. You just do the bit that is, be honest with yourself and do the bit that you can do with the time that you have. Lastly, I think detachment, this is what is happening when you take a creative break, a break that is restorative, is that you are developing what's called detachment, as in you are doing something that is separating you from work. And I think it's key to creativity and longevity. And this is primarily from case studies, but you find someone who's had a long, productive career doing creative stuff, and they've taken detachment very seriously. And this is, as I mentioned, why people who take lunch breaks feel happier about their work, more invested in their work, more engaged with their organization than those who do not, and are more productive. I mean, I don't want to get into holidays unless people want to ask about it, because it's a really confusing area. But one thing we know for sure is if you take holidays, you're going to be more productive than the people who don't, which again is just so ridiculous, isn't it? I'm going to be in the office for more days of the year, and yet I would be more productive if I go on holiday. And this is from that holiday that I went on in the middle of the PhD write-up. And lastly, and again, I just want to unpick the ideas about rest. Deep play is a great way to achieve detachment. So this is something which takes a lot of mental effort, maybe physical effort, but isn't your work. So like part of me getting better at guitar was that I would step away from this work, and it's hard work. And anyone who plays the guitar, if you're not very good, it's hard and it hurts. But I'm doing something that is still using my mind, but in a completely different way. And same with like shooting, getting a good like shot shape is hard, but it's like that's still restorative to me. I'm judging it by how I feel after I've done that when I come back to work, rather than how my fingers feel as I'm pressing them down trying to do, you know, G sharp minor. And I think it's really affected this session. So I guess I thought, just out of interest, I'd write down all the new thoughts about the way I've run this session as I went. So that thing about, you know, like make this your own, the disclaimer about it, that kind of came to me in a break. Using breaks in the session structure, that came to me whilst I was on a break. Like having some kind of discussion about the breaks, that came to me on a break. Yeah, I originally had 2 discussion sections. There's only 1 now. That came to me on a break. The classic car metaphor came to me on a break. It's just a different way of my mind working on the same problem that isn't me just tapping away on the keyboard. So in summary of this bit, productivity is more limited by our capacity for mental effort than it is for time. What I'm doing on the break is creating a better capacity for mental effort than I am by just powering through. And the way that I organize my desk, whether I have my phone in this room or the other, is creating mental capacity for the effort that I want to put into the work. So where do we go now? And this is where we're going to go and break in. You'll have received an email now from Alice inviting you to a little breakout room. And I'd just love you to think about what you're going to do with what we talked about so far. So firstly, what I would do is audit. So this addressing Camilla's point, the first thing that I would ask you to test out to see if this is even worth anything to you is estimate how long you think you will work on the intended tasks in a day. And kind of this is how I ended up doing it, Camilla, was like writing an introduction, say. How long does that, you know, writing a 2,000 word introduction, say, something like that. How long does that take me? And when you've done that a few times, it sharpens up your estimate. As you saw from my slide earlier, I'm still off, but I'm way tight. I mean, I'm really optimistic. So I'm way tighter than I was at the start. And it helps me get a sense of, oh, wow, I'm way off when I'm writing up results, because I often come up with new ideas as I'm writing, for example, or planning a 1.5 hour webinar. I've got a better feel of how long that takes from scratch now, having had a go at it. So you estimate how long you think the tasks the intended tasks of the day will take. Estimate how long specific projects, so like something bigger, I'm going to write a paper on this, or I'm going to design such and such. How long do I think in total that's going to take me? And then monitor the actual time that you are working every 20 minutes and where you are in terms of percentage of concentration effort that you feel you're able to put in. So what that means is having a little alarm that goes off every 20 minutes, and you just think, okay, oh yeah, I've spent 5 minutes doing emails then. Okay, oh, actually, I just kind of was looking out the window for a couple of minutes of that, and I was probably about 75% concentration. So you want to get a feel of how much of your time are you kind of 80%, like really putting your best effort into your work, 20 minutes at a time, because you probably won't notice when you're not doing that. This is a kind of conclusion that I've come to. We're talking about project work that involves creativity that takes more than one day, I would exclude emails and meetings as anything that you're considering productivity. I don't know if that feels shocking or not, but it's just a conclusion I've come to. It's not that emails and meetings aren't useful. I think they're just, the relationship with productivity is so hard to predict. I can spend a really long time sending emails and get nowhere. Same with meetings. But I mean, I can also send one email and it really moves things on. A meeting really helps me, that kind of thing. But it's just, that relationship is so hard, I've just decided to exclude them, treat them as something different to the kind of project work. And I would encourage you to do that if you're estimating if this is useful. I'd just be ruthless and be honest with yourself. The urge to not include that little, oh, that was kind of working, is so strong because of the urge to look busy. Then monitor what you are doing with your time that you aren't working. Is it that you're not working on intended tasks is what I mean. Are you doing things that you would want to be doing on your rest break? This is you not working. Is that what I want to be doing? And adjust accordingly. Then when you try doing things different, assess the changes based on this. Am I more productive? Am I concentrating at a high level more of the time? That's your assessment criteria. Then experiment. Do something different on a sanctioned break, visibly. As in, at a time when most people are breaking, do something different to the few, to eating, chatting, and looking at your phone, which I guess is like, those are all pretty well sanctioned. Usually sitting for all of those things. Do something different and see what happens. Arrive at work 10, 15 minutes earlier and take an extra break visibly. How is that going to feel? And try this Pomodoro technique, 25 minutes on, 5 minutes off, or at least 25 minutes on, check, can I keep going at the same level, do another one, and then definitely take a break then. And even break in the middle of something. You don't need to have got to the end because brain's going to keep on churning away at it anyway. And add a different type of break every week. I've put a load of stuff that I now do I think I'll just talk about that if people want to hear about it in a bit. But lastly, I would just say it's really important to find out what's important to you about work. I guess some of this is assuming that you really care about your work when actually most people don't. It's kind of like, this is just what I do. But if you're feeling like that, you're not alone, you're in the majority. But what do you care about that your job serves that would be worth trying something different to feel better about it? Okay, so now we're going to take another break. Yes, it'd be great to be back by 10, 11, 12, and less than 5 minutes, up to 5 minutes. Different to what we've been doing now, and different to what you did in the last one. Think creatively. You know, if you went outside, you could still go outside, but maybe this time you do something different outside. Doable in 5 minutes, but you don't have to finish. And be back here by 11:13. Sorry, don't come back here. Don't come back here. Take your break and go straight into your breakout room, which is on an email that you'll have received from Alice. And go straight into that breakout room. And we're going to be discussing just what you notice from what you've been talking about so far. Everything that you're going to discuss is on that email. Take your break, 5 minutes in that discussion meeting at 11:13, if that's okay. And then we're going to come back for the last few minutes to answer some questions. Hello, it's me, Sam. So I'd sent Matt back here and a couple of other people. So there are some groups where there's only one person in there. So I thought maybe we could just start the question and answer session now. Adam's going to join us in a second. It would be great if you could like put, so Adam's been kind of keeping an eye on the chat. It'd be great if there are questions that you wanted to make sure I answer now. If you could put them in the chat now. Again, apologies if you put them in earlier. Adam has got some that he wants me to answer, but I'll answer that when people kind of come back in a few minutes. But if there's one that I can answer now, so Matt's just put one in. I'm wondering about implementation because I'm not like Sam in many respects, but even the honesty about how much time I waste on pretend work. Okay, yeah. Well, as you know, Matt, I start to get annoyed that people don't think that they're like me when actually a lot of people are very similar to me. But if they were like the hardest bit, I think the honesty bit is probably I don't know, I think that's probably the hardest thing, to spend my whole life thinking that I was working when I wasn't really working. That's probably been one of the hardest things. But I think I can honestly say I did not expect how incredibly different life could feel, not just work, by letting myself know that I can't concentrate that long. I'm kind of a procrastinator. You know, I need a break. I need a break a lot. That's been really helpful for me. Yeah. Oh, what's this? Okay. Oh, thanks for that, Camilla. I'm just going to, yes, I'm going to just start answering some of the questions that Adam had flagged up. If you're just joining, we're just going to start a bit of question and answer session for the last few minutes. Yeah, someone had asked, like, how do you do this in team-based working? And again, I'm like, hear this as like, I'm starting the conversation of this because I think it's got merit, but I'm not like an expert in it. I'm like a fellow student of it. So I'm working that out myself. So I think I still would stick with the conclusion of don't include email and meetings as productive time. I think that still makes sense. And just apportion out the time that you're going to be doing your own thing. So, and I think that, well, this is the main stumbling block that I've come across, is then it's hard to then give any value to emails and meetings when they do clearly have a value. But it's more about, if I'm working on my own, I'm really working on my own. And when I'm not doing that, I'm doing something different. Something I've toyed with, which I think some people might find useful, is that I did start like just doing the timer thing, even when I was doing emails, but not counting it in like my register of how many I was doing for like productive work. Because then, I don't know, there's something about just having the timer going and knowing, oh, this is work time, that makes me actually do emails better. Yeah. I suppose maybe if I just, might potentially be worth me just showing you stuff that I now do. Oh, I'll just tell you. When I'm writing, I work from home. Just because when I'm writing, I work from home because I can add another hour to actual work time. So I guess what I would have seen as a commute, like cycling to work and back again, I would now see that as a break. So that's why I can like literally just start work at 7, because I know I'm going to have a break in 25 minutes or 50 minutes. So that's really helpful for me to know that I don't need to get myself G'd up for work. I can just start, and I'm going to get a break in a minute anyway. I think that's kind of like a really important part. I guess touching on some of the things I mentioned, I keep my phone in the other room, and I have it on like so that calls come through loud and text messages, like not WhatsApp, comes through loud, but it's in the other room. And then I put like WhatsApp on as late in the day as possible. And the same with emails. I will apportion time for that, but I'll put that as like the last thing of the day. And what I've realized, the thing that I hadn't noticed was how crowded my head got, like before I even started work. Because like, I guess I go to bed relatively early compared to other people, or I turn my phone off quite early. So if the first thing I do is turn on WhatsApp, there'll be like messages there, or like there'll be a chat which has got like 10 messages on. And then I'm like, oh, all right. And now I'm going to go and work, and my head is still in that chat. Or if the first thing that I do is check my emails, there will be things that are coming up on that email that I won't resolve before I go and start doing work. And I know that plays on my mind. So I think, doing email as late in the day as possible, turning on WhatsApp as late in the day as possible, has made a big difference to me in terms of how clear my head is. And I've switched from email conversations to, if this is taking more than, say, 3 emails, it's a 3-minute phone call. That is way better than, because let's say I'm like having a to and fro on email with someone, and I'm kind of asking them questions about stuff, and then they don't reply. Let's say they go to a meeting or they go and do something else. They don't reply. That's still whirring around in my head whilst I'm now doing a different task. So like putting that into 1 or 2 blocks just makes so much more sense than the way I would have typically done it, which would have been, and don't get me wrong, the urge is just so strong to that there's probably going to be something urgent, but it's just so, I mean, I know people will be in different roles to me, but it's been very rare for me that's how it's gone. How do we do this with children at home? Oh man, yes. Yeah, I was thinking about this morning. With exceptional difficulty. So I have tried to do this whilst my kids have been here. So I've got 3 daughters, 5 to 11. And I have been using these. Again, I'm very distractible. So when I'm working, I'm really working. And when I'm trying, that's what I try and do. And same for my wife, who's been working from home at the same time. So that like, I can really work when I'm working and really not when I'm not, as best as I can, but I cannot say that I ever reached a time when I felt like, oh, this is going really great. Yeah. There are a couple of other questions, but I just wanted to draw this to a close on time. Thank you so much for coming. It would be good just to maybe in the last minute, if there's anything you're going to do off the back of this, maybe just popping that in the chat. I would be really interested to know, do get in touch with me. Like I say, I would see this as like a kickoff rather than a finish. I'd be interested to know where you're going to go with what we've done today. And if you're going to do nothing, consciously do nothing. Don't just stumble into that. So lastly, Alice has just put in the chat the evaluation form link. It would be really great if you could, or you can just use this QR code. It would be fantastic if you could evaluate this session, just because I really need to know if this is of relevance at all, if this is kind of going anywhere of any use. So if you can either snap this on with your phone or use the SurveyMonkey link that should be in the chat now, that would be awesome. Or you got it on email as well from Alice earlier. I'd really appreciate your feedback. And thank you so much for taking time to do this. And yes, please do keep in touch. And we'll call it time there. I'm just going to stop the recording.